What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Team to Beat Miami Heat basketball channel. My name is Amir, joined today again with my buddy Neil. What's up, Neil?
How you doing, man?
Doing good, not bad. It's Monday night, so just had some dinner. Long work day, but happy to have another basketball conversation with you. Our last video seemed to do pretty well, so I don't know if it was because they like me or if they like you, but I wanted to test that theory out and invite you again. So here we are.
Let's roll.
Cool. So before we get into today's video, I just want to thank everybody for subscribing to the channel and for the continued support. So again, I'm on my path to 300 subscribers. So getting close to that goal. So if you guys could subscribe to the channel, it would mean a lot. If you could like, comment, and share this video, it would help me out as well. So for today's video, I want to talk about a report that came out actually this weekend. So it was based on James Harden and his whole debacle where he called out Daryl Morey and called him a liar and said he doesn't want to play for any organization that he's associated with. And so some other writers were thinking that since James Harden is going to leave prematurely again, that's going to disrupt the team's ability to go far in the East. The Sixers haven't made it to the Eastern Conference Finals since I think AI. So I think it was like 2000 or whatever that year was, where they went to the finals and lost to the Lakers 4-1. And so, yeah, they've been in the process, it seems like, for the last 8 years or so, right? Like they had their 4 or 5, 6 years in a row where they didn't make the playoffs, and they got Simmons and Embiid, and we're in that rebuild. And so people are thinking that Embiid is going to be frustrated with, one, just not making it to the Eastern Conference Finals, and then two, this whole James Harden situation, so losing a talented player. And some people think that he might request a trade too, possibly, whether it's some point this season or next season if they fail again to have a successful season. And in his eyes, in my opinion, a successful season now at this point is not just making it to the Eastern Conference Finals. He's been in the NBA for 9 years now, or 7 years now, excuse me. And he wants to win a championship now. So I think it's a complete failure if the Sixers don't win next year in his eyes. And so there is a report that said that the two teams that are most likely to go the hardest or be the most interested would be the Knicks and the Heat, and that the Heat would be monitoring that situation. I think a bunch of other teams in theory would be monitoring that situation, but they mentioned those are the two teams, and it was some Yahoo insider, I forgot his name. So, Neil, what are your thoughts on Joel Embiid possibly asking for a trade? Like, what do you think that likelihood is? And when do you think that would happen? Like, what would be the last straw? And the second part of that is, what do you think about him joining the Heat? Like, how do you think? What are the pros and cons for the Miami Heat of adding a player of that caliber?
When it comes to Joel Embiid asking for a trade, it could happen pretty soon if Harden is not on the 76ers and there are no capable replacements to fill his gap. We've been waiting for Tyrese Maxey to really emerge, and there has been improvements. He's definitely a very solid player, but without Harden, then there's a lot of burden on Maxey to really emerge as a number two type player. And it's anybody's guess if he can actually do that. So if Philly gets off to a pretty rocky start, it's possible that Embiid tries to like worm his way out. And by the deadline, maybe you could see something happen. When it comes to how he looks on the Heat, in my opinion, it seems like the Heat would need to offer more to get Embiid than they would for Lillard. And one of the things that's always been front of mind when it comes to Miami trying to acquire a big-time star like a Lillard or an Embiid is that they don't really have the assets to make a trade work. When it comes to Lillard, the Heat are in a good position because he specifically asked to be traded there. But in Embiid's case, he's not specifically saying that he wants to go to the Heat. So then that adds in the next layer that they're going to be competing with other teams, and Philadelphia is going to be able to survey the different offers that they're getting. And as you said, there would be a bunch of teams that would want to get like the reigning MVP on their team in Joel Embiid. But if by some magical thing that he ends up on the Heat, I think it would make their defense a lot better. It would provide an anchor in the post that the Heat really need. I mean, Bam, he does his work in the paint to some degree, but it doesn't seem like that's where he's most comfortable. He seems most comfortable kind of at the high post. But then if you add Embiid into the mix, then he would be operating in the low post. But that's not even to say that to get Embiid, you would have to trade Adebayo. So it's a lot of speculation, a lot of hypotheticals. But I did hear the news that Embiid would probably grow frustrated if Harden wasn't on the team. And as much as we like to rag on Harden for how shitty he is in the playoffs, he still helped Philly get to the almost the top tier of the East, maybe the second tier. They seem to always get stuck at the conference semifinal stage. And Embiid's probably growing restless. He's in his prime right now. He just was the MVP. So it doesn't seem too far-fetched to think that he would ask out. And as for New York, I think that would be extremely interesting because if Jalen Brunson is your number 2 player, you're really building something nice there. So if you compare Brunson and Embiid, I think the Knicks might be onto something in terms of trying to ascend up the East standings.
Fair, but if Jimmy Butler's your number 2, then that's even way more interesting. So Jalen Brunson's not in the same category as Jimmy Butler yet, but you also said if Harden doesn't play for the Sixers, like, isn't that a fact? Like, he just literally called his GM a liar. And I guess he came out. Did you see the report today that he said, because people are speculating, what did you lie about? Did you lie that I would get a max deal because if I take a lower deal, last year or whatever it was, year and a half ago, that we could sign players like Tucker and other players to the team, he would get rewarded. So if there's speculation in that, but people are like, what is he calling him a liar, like for or about? And he came out today saying he lied about rapidly trading me, basically, when I said I wasn't gonna, or when he picked up his offer, right? So he picked up his option and basically said that Morey said he would trade me immediately. And that hasn't happened yet. So he's like upset that he's playing hardball, like we talked about, yesterday in our last video. So I mean, don't you think it's inevitable that he's not going to be on the Sixers? And if so, if he doesn't get traded, don't you think he'll sit out?
I think the sit out scenario is very much in play here because Morey, as we've talked about, he's not going to settle for a shitty offer from someone. So there is a scenario where he just lets Harden kind of sit on the bench and kind of figure it out. So that's going to be very interesting to watch. I think the Clippers are the kind of team that would be aggressive in trying to acquire him, that they've done this over and over again, just acquiring veterans for the sake of acquiring veterans. And James Harden seems like the perfect person to end up on the Clippers. I mean, you add him with Russell Westbrook and even Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. The Clippers are just keep chasing the next thing, hoping that's going to take them to the next level, but they keep ending up in the same place over and over again. So Harden and the Clippers seems like a perfect fit. It's just a matter of what Philly would get in return. It seems like the Clippers have some decent assets. I'm not even sure what a potential deal would look like at this point, but it's interesting to think about because it does look like something that's in play. But if Morey doesn't feel like he's getting the return that he needs, he's not going to hesitate to just have Harden sit on the bench for the regular season. And then that's going to piss off Embiid, which could lead to his own trade requests down the line. So that line of thinking is definitely possible. I could see that happening.
Yeah, definitely. So if the Heat were able to get him, and there's different reasons why they could get him. One, his relationship with Jimmy Butler. They seem to be really close friends off the court, and they really wanted to keep Jimmy Butler in Philadelphia, but there's the whole issue with them wanting to keep Tobias Harris. And if you remember the line that Jimmy Butler has said, I think it was last playoffs when they beat the Sixers, he's like, Tobias Harris over me? Like, seriously? Like, you wanted Tobias over him. So Joel wanted him to play and run it back, obviously. And they played relatively well together during the season. and Jimmy was super clutch. I remember. I don't think he played a full season with them in the regular season, but I remember he hit a lot of buzzer beaters in the regular season before they went to the playoffs and ultimately lost to the champs, right?
The Kawhi Leonard shot.
Yeah, the buzzer beater in round 2, game 7. So, they were really close, obviously, to getting to the Eastern Conference Finals together. And if they did, I think they would probably have made it to the finals. Like, I think that it was between them and the Raptors, whoever won went to the finals. I wasn't sure that they could have beat the Warriors in the finals, unless the same, shit happened and, both players, Durant and Clay got hurt, then of course they probably would have. But so even though they didn't win that game 7, Jimmy and Embiid have continued to support each other and have been friends. So there is a reason. There could be a reason, because the only reason why Damian Lillard, in theory, wants to come to Miami is because of his friend Damian or Bam Adebayo. They became friends in the Olympics and when they played on the same team. And so that could be a reason. I don't know if I'll see Joel Embiid coming out saying he only wants to play for the Heat, but I think it makes sense because, one, Jimmy Butler, and then two, the system and Spo. So I think he's seen firsthand what Spo can do in the playoffs. He definitely outcoached his coach multiple times as the Heat have beat the Sixers in the playoffs. I think 2 out of the last 3 times that we've played, and back to back. So I think Embiid would be a good fit, obviously, with the Miami Heat. And I think once getting him into our developmental system, into our training programs, I think he's going to be in the best shape that he could ever be. I think the Heat have the best workout nutritional program, training program in the NBA. Like it's basically like you're in military boot camp, and Pat Riley wants you to have like a certain percentage of body fat. I forgot what it was, but there's a story about when Dion Waiters and James Johnson and those folks joined the team. And Tyler Johnson, Fresno State baby. So basically the team that got overpaid. Basically, we had multiple bad contracts that we gave out to James Johnson, Tyler Hero, Dion Waiters. But Dion Waiters came in, and I think during training camp mentioned that he was throwing up in a trash can, doing like sprints and workouts with the Heat. And he was a professional for like 6 years or 7 years in the NBA at that point, right? So he's got to be in decent shape. So I think Embiid would be a good fit. But if the Heat got Embiid, it is based on who they obviously trade for him. And I'm going to assume that you have to trade Bam Adebayo in order to get Joel Embiid. So do you think, like, where do you think that Heat team would stack up if it was Jimmy Butler and Embiid reunited again in Miami? Where do you think they would stack up in the East?
They would have more longevity if they traded for Embiid instead of Lillard. So they would be top 3 with Milwaukee and Boston, definitely. The Giannis Embiid matchup would be very interesting in a playoff series. It would be tough to say that Embiid would get the better of Giannis just based on their history in the playoffs. Giannis has done a lot more in the playoffs, but maybe Jimmy Butler would compensate for that. So it would be an interesting matchup. With Boston, Boston has owned Embiid, but they've had a lot of battles with the Heat, and the Heat, I think, are up 2-1 in their battles in the Eastern Conference last 3 years. So they would probably have the edge there too. So they would probably be the favorite of the 3, but we're still a number of steps away. First of all, Morey would have to dump Harden or have him sit on the bench. And if he dumped Harden for assets from the Clippers, maybe the 76ers are better because Harden might not be additive to what the Sixers are trying to do. So if you get him for some decent pieces and then you pair it around Maxey and Embiid, then maybe you get something better. So it really depends on the Sixers, and they need to have a really terrible start to the season. That would probably get Embiid restless because he's like, I just lost my running mate or supposed running mate in Harden, and he's not seeing that this team is improving. Then he could possibly demand a trade that opens up the avenue to Miami. So there's still a lot of steps to go, but if Miami's getting either Lillard or Embiid, they're obviously going to be in the top tier of the East. We've talked about how the East is really wide open. There's no clear front runner right now. And Miami adding a top, I would probably put Embiid in the top 5. Lillard is definitely in the top 10 to 15. They're easily right there at the top of the East.
What do you think that trade package would look like? Talked about Durant getting a king's ransom. We talked about Mitchell for who he is, got a king's. The Jazz got a huge ransom. Same with the Gobert trade. Those are a lot of assets that the Jazz got, and the Nets. What do you think that package would look like?
I think the difference here is Philadelphia, theoretically speaking, would want to try to still win now. When you look at the Gobert trade, the Mitchell trade, and the Durant trade, those were 3 teams that were happy with getting a boatload of draft picks. And Daryl Morey doesn't really strike me as the type of person that would take draft picks in an offer. So I think Miami would really have to deliver some win now players to the table. They'd have to match the salaries. Embiid's a max player, getting the super max or whatever it is. So you probably might have to trade both Adebayo and Hero to make salaries match and to kind of appease a GM that wants to win now. I don't think the draft picks are going to get it done for a team that wants to win right now.
Well, let me counter you there. And Morey said when it came to Harden, he's willing to get picks. And he also said they wanted, what is it, Terrence Mann or Trey Mann on the Clippers? What's his name? Is it Trey or Terrence?
Terrence Mann, I think,
Terrence,
yeah.
Right? They were adamant about adding him, and the Clippers didn't want to because he's a key piece and good defender, role player for the team. And so he came back and retracted, saying that, like, oh, we don't need Mann for Harden, separate trade. But he did mention they would want pieces. But so why do you think he wouldn't want to go into a rebuild if he gets rid of Harden for those draft capital? Like, how are you going to replace Embiid? Like, we've talked about it. You said it before. I've said it before in older episodes. Vonnig, who's been on the channel, has said it in the past. Like when you trade a superstar, you're not going to get the same value in return.
That's absolutely true, yeah.
So by default, if you're going to trade Embiid, you're hoping to, at least if you don't want to go for you don't want to, he's in his prime. He's 29. He's 4 years younger than Dame. In theory, a big should still be a little more impactful. That's like a two-way player like that. But the fact that he's top 5, top 3 best player in the entire NBA and just was the MVP, like you are going to get some good return right now because of his age, right? And so to your point, I guess it wouldn't be a complete rebuild. So why would you, as the GM, let's say you put on your GM hat, if you're the Sixers, would you want to be a middling team for get Embiid for like just a one all-star, like a Bam, not even a Hero potentially, but like a Bam, I don't know, 3-4 first-round picks? You're going to have to give up all those picks as well. Like Caleb Martin, Jovic, Hawkes, all the young stuff. Like, would you want to go into a rebuild, or would you want to be getting like the Heroes and the Bams and then being like a mediocre team? Because getting Bam and Hero in replacement for Embiid and adding, like, keeping Maxey in the mix, like that's like a 6, 7, 8 seed in the East, right? So would you rather be middling, or would you, and I guess relevant, semi-relevant, or would you rather go for like a full rebuild and get like every draft pick physically possible from them?
That's what the Nets did with Durant. They got Mikal Bridges plus a lot of picks, and that was able to satisfy the Nets. Morey seems a little bit more difficult to negotiate with.
Yeah.
So it would be interesting to see the kind of stance that he would take in that kind of deal, because just knowing him, he's always been chasing the championship. But if you're dumping the MVP, obviously you're getting further and further away from that goal. So it's an interesting question. I would just say, based on Morey's history, he'd want to do whatever he could to try to win now, but that's just not possible if you're trading Embiid and he demands a trade. So it's tough to say. It's tough to say. I would lean towards Morey's trying to do whatever he can to keep Philadelphia as good as possible. But sometimes you got to bite the bullet and be like, look, I got to just take the draft picks and start over.
True. Okay, so what do you think are some realistic trades outside of with Miami? Obviously, we talked about Bam would be included. Most likely, I would assume Tyler Hero. Maybe there's a chance that they can keep him, but um, with the Knicks, I don't know. My assumption is they would have to trade Julius Randle and Hart and quickly and whoever else.
RJ Barrett would be a very interesting negotiating piece.
Even Barrett, like whose stock is up a little bit, but I don't think he's that great. He's definitely a good developing young player, but I don't think he's going to be like an all-star type caliber player. But he could be a really good star, not
He could
all-star.
be like top 30, top 40.
Yeah, top 40 or something. I don't know. Maybe he could still improve. He's like 24, 25, right? Isn't he like 24?
Younger than that, I feel like.
Yeah, because he actually came out when he was like 19. Yeah, it's probably like 23 or something. So, but who is going to be willing outside of the Heat and Knicks theoretically that would take on Embiid in your opinion, and who could actually offer up a legit package? Like you need to trade an all-star for him because he's 29. He's an MVP. He's a top 3 player. He's a superstar in this league, and he's better than Anthony Davis was when he got traded, right? So
I agree with that.
he got like a pretty damn good package. He didn't get any like all-stars at that point, right? Like he got they traded Ingram and Lonzo and all those picks and Hart and stuff, so they got a really good package. But none of those guys have turned out to be all-stars yet, right? I don't think Ingram's been an all-star, has he? Maybe no.
He might have been last year or 2 years ago.
Maybe, but
he's like a fringe all-star, I would say.
Yeah, he's in the West, so it's like super hard at that position, like small forward. That's really tough. So, but for Joel Embiid, like he's gonna want an all-star in return. You said the way more he negotiates, like what all-star is going to be traded? Like who's going to be willing to trade that type of caliber player to get Embiid? Like
well, based on you actually kind of brought up an interesting point with the Anthony Davis trade. OKC comes to mind as a team that could send away some of their young assets, maybe like a Chet Holmgren and a Josh Giddey, and then you pair up SGA and Embiid. That seems very interesting to me. So if you pair like Giddey, Holmgren, and some of your wealth of draft picks, they have so many, it's ridiculous. So
you mean 4? Like some is like 2. Like
4. Yeah, give them 4. They probably have like 18 over the next 10 years or something.
Yeah, they need to give like 5 if applicable. I think it's more in like those players plus 4 to 5.
And like pick swaps also.
Especially if you're going young talent of Chet hasn't even played an NBA game.
Yeah.
And Giddey, who's like good, but like come on now. Like compared to even like a Julius Randle, who I'm like skeptical about. Like he's been an all-star. He's a capable scorer, averaging 25 points a game, 10 rebounds. There's different reasons why I don't think he's the greatest player. He's a really good regular season player, but that to me, I think would be more impactful. I guess because it's a risk with Chet, especially right now, it's more unknown there. But also to counter what you're saying, which I don't think it's like a horrible idea, but Embiid wouldn't want to go there because he could just say the same thing that Dame did. It was like, I only want to go to these 2 teams so that I can get the bidding war down to those 2 teams specifically. And he wants to play for a contender. Like, so Embiid would probably like rather stay with the Sixers at that point than go to a rebuilding OKC. Like putting him with Shai and whoever else, the Williams bros, is not going to cut it. Like that, they're like the 4th seed, 3rd seed in the West at that point, right? So I don't know, but I mean, yeah, I guess the Knicks make sense with Randall because like they should trade him in general, right? Because he's just doesn't show up in the playoffs. I can't really think of any other teams that have the right assets that they'd be willing to trade for them. And I don't know what they would want in return, whether it's like, would you want some guards in return for them, or would you want
Utah? Maybe Utah. Like maybe Lauri Markkanen and some of
Yeah,
their
you
draft
stop
picks.
thinking that way because he wants to leave because he wants to win a championship. He's not going to win in Utah, so you have to think
Yeah,
about contenders or teams that are like the Cavs and Knicks in that tier, like in the Heat. Like,
yeah, I understand what you're saying. I'm thinking more so from the perspective of who could provide a competitive offer
oh yeah,
Lauri would entertain. But to your point, if Embiid makes a specific demand about where he wants to go, the Jazz and the Thunder will absolutely not be on that list.
no chance. And like I did videos about player empowerment and like all the flexibility and stuff, and superstars go where they basically want to go, right? So, um, it happens 9 times out of 10, right? That they pick a place, they pick a few places usually, so they don't get in trouble, or they just in generally want to go to a couple different places, have friends on different teams. So, um, yeah, there's no shot. Like those are like more intriguing for what Maury would want, but it's not about what he wants. It's a superstar, all-star driven league, right? They get to dictate where the hell they want to go, which is like why they want to put in restrictions, right? Like where people can't say they won't show up, like the memo for Dame and all that crap. But yeah, think about it. There's like not many other teams.
In terms of contending teams, maybe Boston if they gave up Jaylen Brown and something else. That's something that could work because, well, Boston has had a lot of opportunities to think about whether they want to keep Brown and Tatum together. And it
Yep.
almost seems like they end up stuck that, I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing. They're still fairly young, they're in the middle of their careers,
Yep.
that they want to keep Tatum and Brown together. But if they wanted to chase Embiid, they could trade Brown plus someone else. Actually, if anything, Philly would probably have to trade more to make the salaries match. But that could be a contender that would consider it. But that would be a pretty big shakeup for Boston. I don't know if they'd be willing to do that.
Yeah. But you're on the right track, I would say. Something like that. But that doesn't even move the needle for them again. Like then they would also have to I mean, it depends on who they would be adding. Like it would be interesting if they added like Harden and Embiid together to match the salary, I guess. But Embiid's getting like 230 million or something over the next 4 years. So it's like he's fine. That's a lot of salary that they're getting back in return. But I don't know if that moves the needle for them. You know, that's just a duo right there. That might not be the best fit. You know, who knows? But I don't even know as a Heat fan that I would want Embiid over Bam, honestly. And I know through other videos that I've made videos about rumors about this in the past, like before these reports came out, saying like, should the Heat go after Embiid if he becomes available, and knowing that we would have to trade like him, maybe Tyler, some draft picks, and some other pieces. And a lot of the Heat fans had a lot of backlash, like over Joel Embiid, over Bam Adebayo, and you can imagine what those reasons are. Like obviously Joel Embiid's better. He's an MVP. He averaged 33 points, like 12 rebounds a game last year, 3 assists, a couple blocks, was dominant. So obviously he's a better player than Bam Adebayo. He's the second best center in the NBA, but Bam is the third. So Bam is the third best center, I think, not by far, I guess, but he's definitely better than Cat and whoever else. I can't even think of any other ones who would be in the conversation. I don't even know who number.
Jokic.
No, because just one. I'm saying that's one.
Yeah.
Embiid's 3. It's a
So
Cat.
who's next after Embiid?
No, who's next after Embiid? I just said it. Come on, keep up, my friend.
Yeah, no, you said Jokic, Embiid, and then who's next after Embiid?
Bam, that's obvious. And then I was
You
saying
think it's
after,
obvious that Bam is third?
yes, he's way better than Cat. What has Cat done? Cat freaking celebrated and cried when they won a playing game. Like, get the fuck out of here. Like,
So did Patrick Beverly.
yeah, exactly. But I mean, Bam is a way better playmaker. He's a better defender all around, like defensive player of the year candidate year after year. Um, Not as good offensively, but he's not like extremely far off. Like for a guy who's never been good at offense, he's averaging 20 points per game the last 2 years in a row. That's like pretty good when he's not the main focal point when you have two other guys on the team averaging 20 points, right? So like not many teams have 3 20-point scorers. So if Bam was on a shitty team and put up like 8 more shots, I'm sure you could get points like Cat. I'm sure you could have averaged 24 points per game on the T-Wolves by himself. So I don't know who number 5 or 6 is, but either way, the issue with Bam or Embiid, in my opinion, and I'm not sure. I mean, if we can keep Hero and not trade Bam, and so we have a big 3, if you want to call it that, with Hero, Jimmy, and Embiid, I'd be more enticed, I would say. But Jimmy and Hero don't mesh super well. Um, maybe he would if he was the starting, I guess, point guard again. We tried that before with Tyler Hero. He didn't do the best, but he's becoming a better passer and playmaker. Um, but I just don't think if we get Embiid and we trade Hero and Bam, it's going to move the needle for us to win a championship. If we have Hero, maybe that helps out a little bit, but Bam is not injury prone. We haven't talked about that yet with Joel Embiid. He's been injured every year, it seems like. He got hurt this year, and against the Heat 2 years ago, like he got elbowed in the face, had a broken face that like played a factor. Like he's had knee issues. So one, durability, Bam's been way more durable and available. Two, Bam's been better in a sense, or more productive and helpful for his teams in the playoffs.
Kind of fits into what Miami wants to do. And then if you bring in Embiid, you're really changing the identity of what the Heat are trying to do.
Yeah. And like to your point, they're both great defenders, but Bam's a better all-around defender because Joel Embiid can't go to the perimeter. He can't rotate. He can't guard 1 through 5 like Bam can. Like Bam, you're right. Is not a he is not bad at like protecting the rim, but he's not a good rim protector like Joel Embiid. But he's overall a better defender. He's a better passer than Joel Embiid. He's definitely not better in general. Like obviously, I'd still technically take Embiid over Bam if I had to, but as part of the Miami Heat fit and culture, I think Bam plays a better part. But also, again, he's been more important. Like he's stayed healthy. He's helped his team get to the finals twice. Bam was arguably the best player in the finals for the Miami Heat. If they somehow won that series, he would have been the MVP. Embiid hasn't got past the second round, like, and he's had pretty good teams. Like he hasn't had horrible teams. Like he's had some good teams that they put together. And he just hasn't been able to stay on the court. But also in the playoffs, he doesn't choke like a Randall or Harden, who I've talked about in the last couple episodes. But he averaged 33 points a game last year. He went down to 23, and in the playoffs, like that's like a huge drop, and it's understandable because obviously playoffs is harder than the regular season. Competition's way better, but like he does worse in the playoffs, not by a lot, but like his points and rebounds and all that stuff, his percentages all go down in the playoffs.
Yeah,
But
it's fair to question what he's bringing to the table in the playoffs. He had, like you would expect one of these years he would kind of power through and win one of these second round series, right? We've seen Giannis do it in the second round. Tatum did it against Milwaukee 2 years ago. Butler's done it. All of his peers in the East have been able to come up with the great performances to get to at least the conference finals. And all three of the guys I just mentioned did it to get their teams to the finals. So there's definitely something missing in terms of his postseason credentials right now.
yeah, so for me, just as a Heat fan, I think it'd be tough. Unless, again, if we keep Hero and we don't have to trade a bunch of picks because he says, I only want to go to the Heat, that would help us out. Because Bam is a max player, if you add in someone, let's say if it happens this year right now, like let's just say for some reason he requests the trade now during the offseason and says, I only want the Heat also. Then holy shit.
Love that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, of course. Options are great. God, could you imagine if we had that option between him and Dames? Like, who do we prioritize at that point? But if he does that, then the Heat again would have the luxury. I'm not saying this is going to happen, or I think it would happen, but they would have the leverage in the sense where they, okay, cool, we'll give you Bam, and we'll give you 3 first-round picks, maybe 4. We'll give you Caleb Martin, Kyle Lowry to match salaries, and like Jovic or something, right? And Hawkes too, take him. Would I take that though? Like, because we get to keep Hero, like, and have him again, like I said, as that big 3, because I think keeping Hero would be beneficial. Obviously, I think losing Hero and Bam would set them back a bit because we're going to have to lose other pieces to fit the salary.
Then you're just becoming like Phoenix at that point.
Yeah, you're gonna have no depth. So I don't know. I just don't know. I think if that happened, I'd still probably want Dame on the team. I think he's a better fit in my opinion. So before I get into that, like, just who would you take if you were a Heat fan? Like, let's say they don't have the trade hero. Let's say it's just Bam, a lot of picks and whatever filler. Who would you think's a better big three? Bam, Jimmy, and Dame, or Hero, Embiid, and Jimmy? Who would you rather have if you were a Heat fan? Who should we prioritize?
I would probably lean towards Embiid because you're younger with Hero and Embiid on the team with Jimmy. Jimmy could kind of still play the alpha dog role, and Embiid as a number 2 would be pretty scary. And you still have a great defensive infrastructure there. But it's really between two great options. I mean, if you had Bam, Lillard, and Jimmy, that's pretty phenomenal also. So it's hard to have a wrong answer here. But I just think Embiid is younger, and maybe the fact that he's not going to be counted on as the top option, it would be pretty clear that Jimmy's the alpha dog in a postseason scenario. So maybe with that, with not as much pressure on Embiid, his postseason struggles would be alleviated to some degree.
Yeah, maybe going back to what I said too about getting him into our system in camp and getting him healthier, probably better diet, like stronger, probably be in the best shape of his life. And he is younger, I guess, than Dame, and also a top 3, 4, 5 player in the NBA. I think Dame's probably more like 12 to 15, maybe. You said 10 to 15, so like
Yeah,
similar.
something there, yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe because he's 33 now, so it's like maybe 3 years ago he'd still be like top 8 or so at that point, top 7 maybe. I don't know. What do you think? I don't even know.
What Lillard's peak was?
Yeah, what do you think is, just thinking out loud off topic, like 7?
Definitely in the top 10.
Yeah, tough to go down even further. But yeah, so I think, I mean, even though Embiid's 29, younger, is a big, like, these centers are super rare now in the NBA. There's not a lot of players in the NBA that are as impactful as folks like him. And oh yeah, Anthony Davis. I forgot. Is he a center technically? I guess he's considered a center. I know he's a power forward.
He hates playing center. He always wants to play the 4.
Yeah, he's technically a 4, but there's not many players like that when he's healthy. He's one of the best two-way players. So I could see your argument. And also he fits in with Tyler's timeline. He's 23. So
the thing is, Miami might have to give up more to get Embiid relative to Lillard. So maybe they would be a little bit deeper if they got Lillard instead of Embiid.
Yeah, even if you still said I want to go just to the Heat, he's young, right? So they have that basically to say. I mean, that is some leverage they'll say. I guess they could have versus Dame, who's a little bit older. But I don't know. I think the ultimate leverage, though, is if they say they want to be only on one team, then they lose. It doesn't really matter how old they are at that point, right? It's what the Heat are willing to pay, not so much what the Sixers would want. But yeah, I don't know. I think I understand where you're coming from, but I think Dame just fits in better having a superstar point guard, a superstar small forward in Jimmy Butler, and an all-star in Bam Adebayo versus having Tyler Hero, who's still really young, is not really proven at this point as your third best player. Like, your third best player in that bunch is Bam Adebayo. That third best player in that bunch is Tyler Hero. Like, just saying that alone right there makes me want to select Dame, even though Dame is the 12th or 13th best player, not the third best player, right? So I just think it would just be a smoother fit having that point guard, small forward, and center versus that like shooting guard, small forward, and center. But that's just my opinion. I think I'd rather take Dame.
Either way, you'd be sitting pretty.
Yeah.
For the most part, I would say.
Either way, I mean, it'd improve our team. I'm sure, even if hypothetically, if we traded it Embiid for Bam, I think we're better with Embiid. Obviously, if we're able to keep Hero, because right now our big three is Hero, Bam, and Jimmy. And if we can somehow keep Hero, let's not think about the Lillard trade. Like if we can get rid of Bam for Embiid, then obviously I think the Heat would be a little bit better if they had Embiid, Hero, and Jimmy, but not as good as if they had Dame and kept Bam with Jimmy. So they'd still not be an eighth seed like they were last season, or seventh seed technically, but I could see them being a top 4 seed for sure, integrating Embiid on the team. But if if the chemistry works, then they could be a top 2 team. I think even ahead of Boston, I would say.
Can't disagree with that.
Yep. Is there anything else you wanted to go over? I think that's all I had for today. We're at 41 minutes, so
I think that's a good place to end it. Good conversation.
yeah, good conversation, man. Hopefully we can have you back again. If there's any more reports.
Closer to the season, there's not a lot to talk about right now. We're dealing with a lot of hypotheticals about Embiid asking for a trade.
Yep, we're just on Dame watch though, so still on Dame watch. And yeah, just to end, I talked about this in another video, but Dame has been trolling the Trailblazers. It seems like on his social media, which has been fun. So he unfollowed the Trailblazers on Instagram yesterday, which I don't know what that means. I don't think it means much, but he also, I was going to say, what is it called? Reposted a story on Instagram, I guess. He shared a story when some fan commented on his music video thing, and said like, "Can't wait for you to be in Miami. Can't wait to hear your music." And he reposted it. So before we end, what do you think? What do you make of that? What do you think Dame is doing? Do you think he's signaling? Do you think he's trolling? Like, what goes on through your mind when an NBA player does that, especially when they put a memo out saying you can't directly say anything about Miami, or going to one specific team? So what are your thoughts on that as we end?
He's probably just having fun sending messages to people with these cryptic things that he's doing just to like mess with people's heads. I mean, obviously he wants to go to Miami. That's his one and only preferred destination. So now he's just going to use every opportunity to kind of amplify those intentions any way that he can.
Yep. I don't think it means anything really. I think it's just having
He's just like messing around, having a good time. He's probably bored before the start of the season. He's like, this would be interesting to do right now.
I don't think he's bored. He's got all the money in the world. He was just like traveling into Italy like a month ago. I think he's having a good time.
You got this guy on lock on social media. You know all of his whereabouts.
I actually don't follow him on social media. I see it from publications reposting what he's up to. So the whole "Welcome from Miami" thing, I think, or "Welcome to Miami" song, that was playing in the background. I think he was like in a club in Europe or something. So I think that's how I remember that he was out of town. But anyway, thanks for joining again, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
See ya.